How do we truly know who we are? It's a question that transcends the surface of self-discovery, diving deep into the layers of our existence, pulling apart the threads that make up the person we think we are. But how do we distinguish between the self that has been shaped by the world around us and the self that lies beneath, raw, untouched, and authentic? Martha Beck's The Way of Integrity not only asks us to live in alignment with our true selves, but subtly whispers a more profound inquiry. How do we recognize that true self in the first place? What are the markers, the signs, the ways we can peer through the fog of conditioning, expectation, and external validation to glimpse the essence of who we are? The journey to integrity that Beck describes is not just about peeling away the external layers, it's also an exploration of the inner wilderness. Many of us, perhaps most of us, live life under the impression that we are simply the sum of our experiences, our achievements, our roles, and responsibilities. We accumulate identities like layers of clothing, donning new personas as we move through life: child, student, employee, partner, parent. But do any of these roles truly define who we are? Or are they simply masks, disguises we wear to navigate the demands and expectations of society? The question, "Who am I?" has echoed throughout human history. Philosophers, mystics, and thinkers from every tradition have grappled with it. And yet, it remains elusive. Beck offers us a framework, not for finding a definitive answer, but for the process of discovery, a process that is ongoing, evolving, and deeply personal. And it begins with the simple act of listening. What if the truth of who we are has been speaking to us all along, through the whispers of our deepest desires, the quiet longings that rise up when we allow ourselves to be still? Beck suggests that our true self has always been there, waiting patiently beneath the noise, beneath the roles and expectations. It doesn't shout or demand attention. It simply is. And our task is to remove the layers of untruth, the shoulds and musts, that have buried it. But how do we know when we've found it? This, perhaps, is the most perplexing part of the journey. There is no neon sign that flashes, "This is who you are." Instead, Beck points us toward the subtle signals of alignment. Those moments when we feel deeply at peace, when we are not striving or pretending, but simply being. The feeling of integrity, of being whole, is unmistakable once we experience it. It's the sense that we are finally living in harmony with ourselves, no longer divided between the person we are and the person we pretend to be. One way to begin this inquiry is to ask ourselves, what brings me alive? What makes me feel expansive, joyful, at peace? These are the moments when we touch the essence of our true self. They may not be grand or dramatic. In fact, they're often quiet and unassuming. It could be the feeling you get when you're working on a project you're passionate about, or the sense of stillness when you're immersed in nature. It's in these moments of presence that the noise of the world fades, and what's left is the truth of who you are. Beck argues that when we are living out of alignment, we experience suffering as a kind of internal alarm system. Our anxiety, depression, stress, and dissatisfaction are not just unfortunate byproducts of modern life. They are signals, pointing us toward the places where we are out of sync with our true self. When we ignore these signals, we numb ourselves, distract ourselves, and continue down the path of disconnection. But if we pause and listen, these signals can guide us back to integrity. Let's consider this from the perspective of someone in a leadership position, a business owner, an entrepreneur, or a strategic thinker. How often do we chase success as defined by external metrics, money, status, influence, only to find that it doesn't bring the fulfillment we expected? We achieve the goals we set out to accomplish, yet something feels missing. This is the perfect example of living out of integrity, of chasing a version of success that doesn't resonate with our inner truth. So, how does one know when they were aligned with their true self? Beck suggests that it's not about finding a singular identity, but rather recognizing a state of being, one that feels whole, undivided. When you are in alignment, your actions flow effortlessly from your deepest values. There is no internal conflict, no sense of pushing against yourself. You are no longer striving to become something or someone else. You are simply expressing who you already are. But to arrive at this place, we must first strip away what is not true, and that can be a frightening process. After all, what happens when we let go of the roles, the identities, and the stories that have shaped us. Who are we without them? This is where Beck's insights become truly transformative. She tells us that we must have the courage to face this uncertainty, to sit with the discomfort of not knowing. The truth of who we are cannot be found in the narratives we've constructed about ourselves. It can only be discovered in the quiet, in the stillness, in the moments when we allow ourselves to be, rather than to do. In this way, the journey of integrity is not a quest to become anything. It's about unlearning, unraveling, and releasing the layers that obscure our true nature. It's about shedding the false selves we've accumulated over the years and returning to the essence of who we have always been. For the business leader, this might mean letting go of the need to constantly prove oneself through success or achievement. It might mean redefining success altogether, not as something external, but as an inner state of alignment where your work and your values are one and the same. For the entrepreneur, it might mean stepping away from the pressure to conform to industry norms or expectations, and instead following the path that feels most authentic, even if it's unconventional. This journey requires a deep trust in oneself, a trust that many of us have lost along the way. But, as Beck reminds us, the way of integrity is the way of truth, and the truth, no matter how difficult it may seem at first, will always lead us toward greater freedom, peace, and joy. So, how do we know who we truly are? Perhaps the answer is not something we can grasp with the mind. Perhaps it is something we must feel, something we must allow ourselves to experience. When we live in alignment, there is a sense of ease, of flow, of rightness. When we live out of alignment, we feel fractured, conflicted, uneasy. The key is to follow those feelings, to trust the signals our body and soul are giving us, and to have the courage to make the changes necessary to bring ourselves back into integrity. In the end, the journey to the true self is a journey of remembering. It's about coming home to who we've always been, before the world told us who we should be. It's about reclaiming our wholeness, our integrity, and living from that place of deep inner truth. As you move forward, I invite you to continue this inquiry. Ask yourself not only, am I living my true self, but also, how can I better recognize that self, and what steps can I take to live more fully in alignment with it? The answers may not come easily, but the process of asking, of exploring, of seeking is in itself a profound act of integrity. And as always, keep books over mind.